Hello, everyone. Christina Werner here. Welcome to mail art number 7 here at my YouTube channel. Today, I'm actually going to be making an envelope for this card that you're seeing on screen. It's one that I made for the Simon Says Stamp YouTube channel. So you're first going to see me make that card, and then we'll get into the envelope. Today, I'm using the stamps and pattern paper and cardstock and all the things from the February 2024 card kit. Here's the stamp set that's included in the kit. This is called Slider, Camera, and Typewriter. It's a great kind of interactive type of stamp set. And included in your kit, you actually get the dies that coordinate with the typewriter. You can get the dies for the camera separately. And in fact, for my card today, I'm going to be using the camera, but I'll just freehand cut the camera and it works out great. Included in the kit are these beautiful pattern papers, which I'll be using today. And I'm going to start out by stamping the camera. So I'm removing it from the stamp set sheet and putting it on the door of my MISTI. And I'm going to be stamping it in charcoal ink onto some white cardstock. This is Neenah Classic Crest Solar White 80-pound cardstock. And I'll just stamp that, and then you can see all that beautiful detail from this image. I think it just looks great. And now I'm going to stamp onto some pattern paper. I thought it would be kind of neat to have sort of these like Polaroid or instant camera type images made out of pattern paper. So I'm placing that kind of photo stamp so it frames an area of the butterfly paper, and I'll stamp that and then I'll set it aside, and I swapped it out for a different piece of pattern paper, this really pretty floral. And then for a third photo, I'm going to use the pink cardstock that's in the kit. This is Cotton Candy cardstock from Simon. And on this one, I'm going to stamp my greeting, which says, "Hey, good looking." It's a great way to just get a greeting on there. Now, the stamp set itself, like I said, it's kind of interactive. You can have the photos coming out of the camera, or you can have the paper coming out of the typewriter. For my card today, I'm keeping it really simple, and it's not actually going to be coming out of the camera. Instead, I'm going to have 3 photos fanned out, and that third photo will be the one with the greeting. I stamped my greeting in a clear embossing ink from Simon. Then I applied some white embossing powder, and that embossing powder did stick to my gray inked lines, so I just brushed that off with a clean, dry brush. I then stamped that same image 3 times so that I could have the white frame on each photo. So I'm actually going to be building my photos by cutting out the white frame and then putting the pattern paper and the colorful greeting on the inside. So I just used some scissors and trimmed these out. These were very easy images to cut out. And if you wanted to add a little slit on the camera so the photos could come out, you could just use a ruler and a craft knife and just cut a straight line. So you can go, you can do without the dies, but they are very convenient and very quick. All right, so then I cut out each one of the interior of my photos. And when I was cutting these out, I sort of wanted to cut just slightly on the inside of the stamped line so that the gray stamped line on the actual white cardstock would show a bit more. I trimmed each one of these out, and then it was time to start assembling them. So the way I put these together is I just use a little bit of tape runner. My favorite tape runner right now, and has been for a few years, is Tombow Extreme Adhesive. It's super, super sticky. It's one of those ones where it's permanently adhered. For my greeting, I wanted to kind of darken up this pale pink cardstock a little bit. I wanted more of a coral shade. So I used the color of ink called Blush, and I just blended that in from each side. And that really kind of changes the look of the cardstock. I also used a little bit of watermelon ink just on the edges to have a little bit more of that warm red tone coming in. And after I had a bunch of that watermelon ink on, just coming in on those edges, I decided to tone it down a little bit. It was looking a little bright. And so I used that same charcoal ink that I used to stamp the camera and also the frames for the photos. And for this one, I started the blending really far away from my actual piece of cardstock because I just wanted just the edges to get kissed by that blending brush. So very, very gentle blending brush coming in, and it kept the charcoal ink at a minimum. For this last one, you can see the difference from the back of that cardstock, which is that clean, bright cotton candy pink, versus the color that I got when I added my blending. And it sort of matches that large flower on the floral pattern paper. I thought the colors matched really well. So for the background of my card, I decided to cut some pattern paper. I'm going to do a 5x7 card, so I cut my cardstock or my pattern paper to 4x6, so I have a little bit of a border all around. And then I also cut a band of cardstock. This is actually fog cardstock from Simon, and I cut it to 1 inch wide and 7 inches across. So 1 inch thick, 7 inches across. And then I darkened it up using that same charcoal ink. Now, it kind of inked up really easily because I had a little bit of that light gray base color, but you could also just press the ink pad directly onto white cardstock. I think you'd probably get a similar color. I adhered my pattern paper to my 5x7 card using that same tape runner adhesive. And after that was adhered, I took my now dark gray band and I adhered that directly down onto the card. I did it probably about 1 3/4 inches from the bottom edge, and I used a long T-square ruler to help me get that on completely straight. I adhered the camera to the card with 6 foam squares, and then I added 2 foam squares just onto the photo with the greeting on it. The other photos are going to be adhered directly to the card using that tape runner adhesive. So this is going to minimize all the dimension and foam behind all these pieces. I wanted it mainly just on the 2 pieces in front, which is the greeting photo and also the camera. So that right side of the photo is hanging over the edge of the camera. So I put regular adhesive on that side and then foam on the other. And then as I adhere this down, there's going to be the bottom right corner of the photo that is sort of just hanging out there with no support underneath. So I'm actually going to take one of the foam squares and I'm going to kind of slide it under the photo and adhere it from underneath. This is really easy to do by removing the backer paper and then just put that foam square on scissors or on the edge of an X-Acto knife, slide that under, and then press it into place. And that finishes my card. I love cards like this because I don't often use pattern paper, but it really does lend itself to a quick and easy card with a lot of impact. So now we're going to get into the envelope, and I decided to use this piece of pattern paper for my stash. In fact, it's from a long time ago. Look at that copyright, 2013. This paper is over 10 years old. It's about time I use it, right? So I thought it just worked really well with the pattern papers from the kit. And I'm going to be making an A7 card or envelope for my A7 card. So I cut my paper to 10 1/4, and then I used the We Are Memory Keepers 1, 2, 3 punch board. And this is a great example of why I like this punch board as opposed to the envelope punch board, because notice that arm that's coming out on the right side there. The regular envelope board doesn't have that arm. So if you're doing larger envelopes like an A7 envelope, the scoreboard isn't large enough, basically. So you have to accommodate for that. So if you don't already have a punch board that will aid you in making an envelope, I really recommend doing the 1, 2, 3 punch board as opposed to the envelope punch board. So here's my envelope all created. I'm going to be using this stencil from Stamperia. I'm not sure if it's still available. I've had this stencil for a very long time, probably going on 4 years. And it's time to break it out and use it. I thought the damask pattern of the stencil really mimicked that pattern paper on the card, and it just worked out so well. So I taped the stencil to the envelope from the back, and then I came in with Coral Reef ink from Simon, and I'm going to very gently go over this stencil. Now, you may have noticed that this stencil is not that really super sturdy kind of plastic material that a lot of the stencils are these days. This one instead is very thin. I mean, it's stronger than regular paper, but it's just very thin and delicate. So you just want to be careful with it. So I went over the whole stencil with a very gentle hand with my blending brush. And that worked out really well. I loved the detail. I was surprised with how detailed this stencil is. It's just so intricate and it's beautiful. Now it was a little too stark and I wanted to kind of tone down that really high contrast of that dark coral color. So I came around the outside edges of the envelope with my blending brush using the same exact color. And I just wanted to really kind of darken up those edges. And then I switched to the color Sparrow, which is, it's not like a cool tone brown, but it's not really a warm brown either. It's kind of neutral. And I wanted to use that to really tone down the bright coral shade and wanted it to look a little bit more aged, similar to what I did on the card when I darkened up the edges on that greeting photo. So it's just kind of going to mimic that look. I think it looks really great. You can see the difference in the original pattern paper versus the stenciled. So this envelope is actually going to someone in the state of Maryland. So I thought I'd pick this lighthouse stamp that has a lighthouse from Maryland on it. And then I picked a few other vintage stamps just to kind of round out this collection of postage. So I'm using a Marilyn Monroe stamp, which is one of my favorites. It has this beautiful blue violet shade in the background. It goes so well with her very blonde platinum hair. And then also one of my favorite stamps is this 5-cent Mississippi stamp. It's the most beautiful kind of aqua, very light teal shade. So beautiful. And then a third favorite stamp, which is this black and white airmail that's only worth 10 cents, but I love it because it's such a good neutral. So for the name on my envelope, I'm actually going to use some graphite transfer paper, and I'm going to use a printout from my computer that has the same font that's on the stamp set. I couldn't tell you what the stamp set or what the font is because I can't think of it right now, but just like a basic kind of typewriter font. So I printed out Cindy's name in that font, really large, and cut it out, printed it, cut it out. And then I taped it to the back side of that transfer paper and then taped the transfer paper to my envelope. And as I trace those letters, it's going to put that graphite transfer onto my envelope. This is a great way to kind of trace a design onto a project. To be honest, I've really only ever used it on envelopes when I want to use a font for a person's name and I want to make sure that it looks really nice. It's something I can't guarantee if I did it freehand. I'll go ahead and use this graphite transfer method. If you don't have graphite transfer paper, you can also just use a pencil and like really coat your paper with the graphite from the pencil and use that as your transfer. That works just as well. So then I went over her name with a white gel pen. This is my favorite. This is the Gelly Roll number 10 Bold. And then in order to emphasize her name and really make it stand out against that busy pattern, I took a black marker. This is I think it's a twin marker from Pilot. And I sort of just drew kind of a margin around all of the letters. And this is going to give me kind of like the area where I'm going to fill in with the black. It's a very similar look to as if it was a die cut. A lot of you watching are card makers, and so you might be familiar with the word dies that have, a thinner word, and then they have kind of like a shadow or a halo die around it that's larger and beefier, and it's, kind of like that kind of blobby shape. Basically, I've created my own black blobby shape in order to emphasize Cindy's name. So after I kind of had that outlined, then I outlined just the words really, really close. And then I went in and colored in all of that area. So this is sort of my go-to method for when I'm going to do a very thick border around a person's name. I like to get the border first. I'll go right up next to the name and smooth out those edges and then come back and fill in all of the black area. I love to do the opposite of this too, where their name is in black and then it has a white kind of halo or border around the words as well. I think that works great. So then I grabbed my T-square ruler and I added 2 big long rectangle blocks. I'm going to have the street address be on black blocks so that it stands out from that busy envelope. So I drew on my rectangles. I just kind of guessed for how much space I would need. So it turns out in the end, it was actually too much space. So you'll see here when I start to write the address that I do have to kind of fill in some gaps, but I think it really lends itself to like the kind of whimsical nature of the card and envelope. I grabbed a kind of a medium tone gray marker and added a shadow coming from all of those black areas. Gives it a little bit more dimension, makes it look like it's popping up off that background. That looks like wallpaper. I mean, let's be real here. It looks like wallpaper. So then I grabbed my white gel pen again and I put on her address. By the way, Cindy did give me permission to use her address on this envelope in a video. So big thank you to Cindy. If you would like to submit your address for consideration for future mail art envelopes, there's a link down below in the video description. You can click over and just submit your address. And at the end of the month, I actually throw away all the ones that have been submitted and start new again. That's how I make sure that the addresses are updated. I only use the ones that have been submitted within the last month. So as you can see, I filled in those areas at the end with some hearts. I think it looked really cute. I added my address to the back of the flap, and then we're all done here. I used completely all waterproof products, except I think maybe that gray marker might not have been waterproof, but such a small area on the envelope, I didn't think it'd be worth, going to the trouble of doing microglaze. But everything else on the envelope is completely waterproof, so it's nice and safe to go through the mail. Thanks so much to Cindy again for allowing me to use her address. And I will be back on Monday with a regular video. I'm not going live on Monday. I'm going to be traveling, so I have a video all prepared. It's a very special one. I know you'll want to come back and see it. So I will share that video on Monday for mail art number 8. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in another video very soon.